purpose of this episode is to help promote mental health awareness. The information provided is not a substitute mental health counseling. This social media page is not confidential nor a HIPAA-compliant platform. If you have specific questions regarding your mental health, you are encouraged to find a personal therapist that can assist you in your journey. If you're experiencing suicidal thoughts, please contact a professional. The National Suicide Hotline is 1-800-273-8255.
Welcome back to the Bender Continues podcast. Today, we're diving deep into the world of mental health with a special guest, Francesca Cook, founder of Replenish Counseling LLC, based in Daytona Beach, Florida. Francesca specializes in supporting children, teens, adults with variety of services, including individual therapy, play therapy, and sand tray therapy, focusing on a holistic and personalized mental health approach.
We're back, ladies and gentlemen, in our new studio room, kind of. Looks a little bit different. And welcome, Francesca. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I know we canceled on you and we kind of pushed it back. Hey, are we still meeting? Are we not meeting? But we finally, we got it set up and together. We really appreciate you. Wow. We really appreciate you taking some time to meet with us and just talk about the bucket of mental health. We are not educated there. You are, and we are excited to learn just a little bit about what you do. So let's start there. Let's just talk about what you do.
So I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I work with children through adults and mostly in trauma, grief, anxiety issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for us? Can you break it down?
So I work with kids in the facet of play therapy, which is how children talk, is through play. So the play therapy side of it is getting them to process through anything that's going on in their lives, which could be just emotional outbursts of anger, or maybe they lost somebody in their lives, so they just need to get it out. And so I work with kids in that form, and then with adults and teenagers in talk therapy, talking about what's going on in life, helping get coping skills, or if you've ever heard of grounding techniques of just being back where you're at and not having such high anxiety. I do accelerated resolution therapy, which is a eye movement therapy, which utilizes REM sleep essentially, but you're awake. And that process is through trauma, because trauma gets stuck in the base of the brain. And when it's back there, people get stuck in it. And so that's kind of releasing it. And so what accelerated resolution therapy does is it re-images what the trauma was. So could be anything from a car accident to abuse.
Wow.
Anything in between.
There's a lot to unpack. Where do we want to start?
Well, I find it interesting, and I think you kind of started to say some of the more the buzzwords in the industry, but what is it called when you're doing more of the sand therapy and stuff versus that talk therapy that you do with, I guess, more adults, teenagers?
Okay, so yeah, I guess I didn't touch on sand tray therapy. I actually am certified in sand tray therapy, which can be with kids and adults. And so that is using figures, and you build your world in the sand and what's going on. And so it kind of looks silly when people do it, because they'll be like, that's a toy. And then they build the world, and it's really getting into the subconscious part of your brain. And then people work through and they're like, wow, what's in here? And so even for me going through the trainings, I had to do it in every training. And you're like, wow, that's actually what's going on in my life, or that's what went on in the past of my life. And then for talk therapy, it's more just talking to people and asking open-ended questions, or helping guide in a way where I'm not telling you what to do, but you're getting to it yourself with, a safe place, a safe person, and you're allowed to, in an unbiased person. I think that's the key in that.
Question in regards to that. So does the type of therapy resonate stronger with, or how you choose the therapy, does that resonate stronger with, I would say, more of an importance to how the person learns? So if someone's an auditory-based person or maybe a visual person, you would choose one form of therapy over another, or probably also has to deal with their age too. In that respect, kids probably learn better with visual representation. But is that how you select those therapies?
Yeah, so with kids, I always do play therapy with 11 and under. Now there might be some talk in the play, and they'll talk to me, but because the way that kids' brains work and process and they're developing throughout, like it literally is their world is play. And so that's how I choose with them. And I use child-centered play therapy, which is very client-driven. So a kid would come in and they choose what they want to do that day. And then we work through that. And then with adults, generally it starts with talk therapy always. So if you go to a therapist, unless you're going for a specific reason, you're going to start with talk therapy. And then throughout, if somebody's stuck, I might use like sand tray or expressive arts, which is like utilizing drawing or something. And with the trauma, it's like when somebody's stuck and cannot move forward, that's when I utilize the accelerated resolution therapy, because it's a different type of, like I said, getting to the base of your brain where like you can't move forward. So you have to do something else. And so that's no talking, basically, maybe a little bit of talking, but it's more re-imaging with the eye movements.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
I know there's probably a lot of other questions. I have a question, but it's probably going to shift us away from the systems here because it's based off of something that Francesca just said. So I don't want to jump the gun here if anybody wants to dive into that.
Well, I'll just piggyback off one of the questions you asked, Kenny. You know, a lot of what you're describing, it seems obviously to us very complex, right?
Mhm.
When you're diagnosing, you know, where someone is at, whether a child, an adult. So I guess, are there specific like keys or cues or things that you look out for just to kind of translate where you need to start, or maybe you need to go back and do something else? Like, I'm just curious what that looks like.
Yeah, so there's assessments we utilize. And then whenever you get the intake, like someone might say, I'm coming to you specifically for trauma, or I believe I have trauma in my life. And so then I always look at accelerated resolution therapy or sand tray therapy, because both of them process trauma. And then I will talk with clients about that. Or, you know, like I said, I always start with talk therapy. So we go from there. If it's like, I can't move forward, I'm stuck, like I can't even utilize coping skills because I'm so keyed up, essentially. I don't know if that's the right word, but I just can't move forward. And so that's where I shift. But generally, yeah, I start with like intake and assessments, and there's like depression assessments, anxiety assessments, mood disorder assessments that I utilize to just check where somebody is at.
Would you say there is a more common ground of one versus the other from like a mood? What does that look like?
I think it's really
all depending on the situation.
Yeah, it's all dependent. And the thing is, too, everybody's different. So people could come in and have like tons of trauma and just be like, I just need somebody to talk to. And then someone else might have tons of trauma too and be like, I need to process through it in a different way than talking. Because I've done sometimes it'll be like people come and be like, I've done talk therapy before and it didn't work for me.
Gotcha.
So that's why they might come to do like more expressive type stuff like sand tray or the accelerated resolution therapy, because they've already done the talking portion.
Interesting.
Can I
Yeah,
piggyback?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in the physical aspect, or I guess the activity-based therapy that you're talking about, because I've always thought it was just always I'm talking to somebody. You have that image of someone laying on a couch and someone across from you, right?
Yeah.
With a notepad, and you're like, what are you writing? What are you writing?
Perfect
Kinda
setting.
like
Perfect
this.
setting.
Yeah,
Literally.
exactly.
Tell us about your day. What happened?
So I guess I'm interested, because obviously we're going to have some people listening and maybe have never heard of this too. Could be in the same boat as me, and they're really intrigued and like, well, maybe this is something I should try, because I've always done, the normal therapy throughout my life, or they haven't done therapy at all, and like, this is a little bit more intriguing. So when you go through this process and you're starting to show people how to do all these sand therapies and different activities and whatnot, do you also give them, I'm going to call it homework, and do some of this stuff at home as well? I guess, what does that package kind of look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I will give people homework. I'm the type of person that if I go to therapy, I will not do the homework. So I don't try to expect anything that I wouldn't do. But if somebody is homework driven, yeah, I will. I'll have them like anything at home. Like people can't do sand tray at home, but they can go play with their kid, or, like set aside undivided time with their kid. Because essentially play therapy, one of the biggest things is undivided time. Kids don't have that anymore. Like we're on our phones, we're on our computers, so with that, you can give that type, or of like teaching people to work with their kids in such a way of like validating their emotions, like, oh yeah, that was really scary, even if it didn't seem scary to a parent. But then on the flip side with adults, an expressive type thing is like, I could send somebody home with, write a letter to your future self, your past self, which would be more expressive, or to this person who hurt you, or draw a self-portrait and identify who you are. So those are things that you could send home, but those are also things you can do in session too. So it just depends on the person, again, if they want homework outside of their, other than just like practice utilizing coping skills.
Yeah. So it basically, you're not necessarily forcing them to do it, just because, again, setting that expectation, like you don't do it yourself, right? That's an interesting take. I always just assume like, oh, well, if you don't try to do these things at home, you're not going to improve, kind of deal, right? But
yeah. Like coping skills are always homework, right?
Yep.
So to learn to cope or learn to notice your emotions, that's always going to be homework. So you do stop going to, like, we call it the autonomic response pattern, where it's like your nervous system just automatically goes to this type of response. Like, say somebody has a panic attack, like you automatically go to that. Well, let's start practicing calming down, breathing, like a mindfulness activity of like, it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, of looking through your senses of like 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can taste. Oh my gosh, my brain just froze. 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can taste, and 1 thing you can smell, kind of thing. So it kind of like gets you back into your body. So those are things that I will get people to work on outside of therapy, because they're more like realistic type things of like, this is how we get you out of your panic phase or out of your anxiety, or get you back into reality and into your body and your brain, and calm your brain down.
I like that. I've never heard of that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 thing, but I think that's something that everyone can do that could like change your current state basically immediately.
Yeah, and sometimes, especially with kids, I'll say look for 7 things that are your favorite color, because that's way easier than thinking, I just stumbled over it and I do it all the time. But like with people, or tell people about it, but it is hard. You're like, okay, 5 things I can what? So sometimes like look for your favorite color, your favorite number, and start looking around the room, or for your favorite items. That's also something that can just like get you back out of that panic type state.
Okay.
Before we go down Kenny's more particular question, just to kind of play it out for us, what's your clientele breakdown in a day or week? Is it more kid-based? Is it pretty even across the board? Kid, teens, adult? Kind of what does that look like?
So that's hard to answer. I started out in private practice where I saw everybody. And then I went into community mental health in a crisis type center, which is like where teens are Baker acted, teens and kids. So I worked there, but also as an outpatient therapist in the schools. And then for about a year and a half, it was solely 5 to 18. And now I'm back in, and it's just kind of like dependent on the season or who's calling. But I would say half and half, kids and adults, dependent.
Awesome.
Cool. My question, or I guess I want to set the stage for more of things that we're going to be talking about today, but I think going back to the basics and understanding like the infrastructure of mental health and therapy is really important, and it allows us to understand create a starting point. And a word that you have said multiple times already has been trauma. And I think a lot of people initiate in doing something to move their mental health into a better place typically starts with them recognizing trauma. But so like let's discover what is trauma. And I think you might have already talked a little bit about that. Maybe your inability to move forward is probably something around there. But can you just go to the basics and what is trauma, and then how does someone indicate whether they have a traumatic event that is causing them to have that inability to move forward, and is that the point where they would then seek mental health assistance?
Okay. Yeah. So one thing is anybody can seek mental health assistance, even if you just need somebody that's, like I said, unbiased and safe. But specifically related to trauma, trauma is not what happened to you, it's the response to what happened to you. So it's how your brain responds to the action. So it might not come up for years, it might come up right away, and you're like, what? Nothing happened. Why am I acting this way? So like your brain kind of processes like fight, flight, or freeze, or now they have fawn as well. And so like say I'll just do a car accident, because that's kind of, somebody might have a response to a car accident where somebody else might not. So it could be they can't drive anymore, or they are driving in a car with somebody else and they're constantly like jerking and freaking out because they've been in a car accident, or just kind of like I'm trying to think of the right words, but so their response pattern isn't that of which they feel safe. So trauma makes your body not feel safe anymore. And if you're in an unsafe environment where you're like being re-traumatized because it's the same thing over and over, now a car accident wouldn't probably be that unless you're getting in car accidents every day, but where you're being re-traumatized over and over, it's hard for your body to get in a sense of safety. And so if you cannot ever get in a sense of safety, you're not going to heal or be able to move forward. But so basically, yeah, trauma is your response to what happened to you. And that's why some people can go through certain things and some people can't. It's just how your brain responds to it, in which you're like freezing or fighting or fleeing everything around you because you can't feel safe in that area. I don't know if that made
No, that made a lot of sense. I like that you said that, because I feel that a lot of people would have the thought that trauma is the event of something happening to you, not the event of the response of what has happened to you. So I like that we uncovered what trauma really is, because I think that there's misconstrued information there, and I think that is helpful to understand. Now, typically, when people come to you, is it because they are seeking assistance with trauma? And then I'm talking about the average. If you look at 100 people that you've worked with, is it typically because of a traumatic event that they feel from their perspective that leads them to you?
I would say, yeah, some people. Obviously, other people are dealing with like depression, anxiety, family issues. Like I said, I deal with a lot of grief as well, because I used to work for New Hope for Kids, and it's a grief organization. But I think, yes, the event will happen, and then they're like, I'm not the same. And that's true. The event was traumatic. And so now your brain is constantly trying to protect you. And so to say that the event was trauma could be, yes, sorry about my dogs, could be, yes, it was, but now it's your body responding to it, if that makes sense. So it's the response pattern that you get into.
Yeah, I like that. No, I like that you see it in that perspective. Because I think from you can change. Like if you look at what can you change, right? You may have not been able to change that particular event. Like what happened is what happened. It may have been because of you. It may not have been because of you. You can't change what happened all the time, but you can change how you react to it. You can change your perspective. You can change you. So it's just, if you think about it from the basics of mental health, you always have the ability to change, because you always have the ability to change the reaction.
Francesca, right. I want to use the car accident example you brought up, because I'm like reflecting back on a friend. His mom was in a very bad car accident. She was driving, and unfortunately the passenger passed away, and it was on the highway. And I remember it was Pop Warner football those days, and she would never drive on the highway. So we would carpool, or one of my parents or other parents would be the driver, just because she couldn't get over what happened a few years ago. Flash forward, I think like 5-6 years later, she's like now able to drive on a highway, and she's moved on since that. But the whole breakdown of like the trauma and the event and breaking that, and almost it's way different than I guess I envisioned. Appreciate you sharing that, because that just all came to fruition.
This just makes me think of your particular event. Makes me think of the movie like Talladega Nights, or like Ricky Bobby, when he like he went through a traumatic event, and then they like
comic relief. I like
then they like had, I don't know, some type of breakthrough. Even though his real dad wasn't the best, maybe his real dad was a therapist.
Didn't he say he kept running around thinking he was on fire, and he wasn't on fire? He took all his clothes off.
Yeah, but then he put like the bag of like cereal underneath the car instead of his drugs, and it made him drive fast, and then he like
Yeah, it's a whole
went through
thing.
that event, right, and that changes his reaction or whatever. Maybe it's just a big therapeutic movie.
If you ain't first, you're last.
Really?
Shake and bake.
Therapeutic. Laughter is therapeutic, I guess. So
Kenny,
it's
the
fun.
movie critic, and now, yeah, just that's great. I like though where Kenny was headed before.
Before the Talladega.
Yeah, before the Talladega Nights thing, where definitions I think is providing clarity,
Yeah.
and obviously people can research this stuff, but hopefully they come find this. You've mentioned depression and anxiety. Can we also go down a similar path where you can kind of talk through like what those things are? Because I think all of us were like, wow, and amazed by what we just learned. And I think there can also be added clarity in those two spaces as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so depression is very much like hopelessness, worthlessness, purposelessness, like no hope. You can't see any hope. And so depending on, there's multiple different diagnoses for depression. And so I'll just stay with major depressive disorder because that's more of like an extreme, but not an extreme, but kind of just like the overview. But it's like you can't get out of bed, and it's lack of motivation, just sad, like deep sadness. So people get to that point and then they want therapy. Like, how do I stop feeling so sad? Or sometimes it's like, I don't even know why I'm unmotivated and can't get out of bed, or I am so hopeless, but I have all this going for me. Because sometimes it's just a chemical imbalance in your brain. And that's out of your control. It could be genetic. It could be, life has happened and now you're in this place. There's a lot of different reasons. And then for anxiety is constant worry, looping in your mind. Now, obsessive compulsive disorder can also be like that because there's ruminating thoughts that way. But anxiety is kind of just like fear-based, and like I said, just thoughts running through your mind. You're up at night, you're constantly thinking. Now, generalized anxiety is kind of a general anxiety of like anything, you're just anxious about everything, where like there's other specific anxieties that are also able to be diagnosed, but I'm just kind of going off generalities with the major depressive and the generalized anxiety because they're kind of like an overview.
Mm-hmm.
You have a
Go ahead,
follow-up?
go ahead.
I have a follow-up to the depression one. Well, we can probably break this into two. So depression. Now, if someone is depressed, let's say it's not a genetic issue, like this isn't a long tail thing.
Yeah.
Do you have go-to? Because a lot of times I think they need to change their behavior. Something that they're doing on a day-to-day, right? They're in this slump, or they're causing themselves to probably get further and further down a process of deeper depression. So are there things that you tell them to do, or are there activities that one can do that could change their state and start to flip the script for them and move them at least physically towards a place where they're not in depression, or at least try to get them out of that issue that's obviously probably getting deeper and worse and worse and worse?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple of things. One thing is there's a psychiatrist called Dr. Daniel Amen, and he's very much like looks at your brain, and it's called brain spec scans. You guys can look it up later. It's actually pretty cool, and it can show you what's going on. But he always says the worst thing a depressed person can do is stay in bed, but that's what they want to do. So I'm always encouraging, just get out of bed and then say, I got out of bed today, because sometimes it's that hard that you just need to give yourself like encouragement, like, oh, I got out of bed today. I showered, I brushed my teeth, because sometimes you're that down. And then my other things that I'll tell people to do is write checklists of even things that people might think is minimal, but you're struggling with because you're so depressed, like showering or brushing your teeth. Write a checklist and check it off every day. And that's an encouragement to you that you've done something that day that's been hard for you, and just got out of bed and stayed out of bed. So those are a couple of things. Also, utilizing positive affirmations of saying something positive to yourself, or writing something on the mirror that's positive to yourself, just to see, because if you're that down, you're probably in a negative loop. And there may be a reason why. Some people say, and I haven't researched this a lot, but some people say that guilt and shame is a high cause, guilt or shame is a high cause of depression and staying there. So it's also in therapy getting to the roots of that too, if it's not like a genetic or chemical balance
Fair.
imbalance.
I have a belief that, and this is a belief, so fair warning, there's my policy, whatever, it's Kenny's belief, that if you're unclear about your future, or if you don't have goals, you don't have some type of, I think from getting from point A to point B is very important, and point B continues to move, right? You reach point B, that moves to point C, whatever, and you continue to scale. But I have a firm belief that if you do not know or do not have the ambitions or the understanding, it's simply the clarity to get to point B. If you don't know where point B is, I think that's half of the issue. I think that having on clarity in where you're going or what you're doing in life, not that you need to know exactly your purpose in life, but I think that at least being on the voyage to figure that out is really important. But I think that causes a lot of issues, because I just feel that imagine getting in your car and driving around and literally not knowing where to go every time you get in your car. You'd be literally driving around aimlessly. And I think that's what people typically end up doing, which then causes them to become depressed.
Yeah.
Through a negative loop and whatnot of negative emotions that continue to follow. But I think clarity is really important. So is there some sort of element to having goals and having milestones in one's life and purpose and finding purpose?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person too, because like I said, there's different reasons why somebody could be depressed, and also not having purpose could be why somebody's anxious as well, because they're like, I don't know what's going on with my life. What's happening? Where am I going? What's going on? Kind of thing, in that kind of negative loop as well. But yeah, and setting goals is a big thing I do in therapy, because it's like, what are your short term? What are your long term? Where do you want to be at? And it doesn't mean that's what you have to do. It's just setting a goal, and what do you need to do to get there? Like, how can you get there? And that does help people in the long run, because then they have something to work towards.
Fair.
Anyone else have stuff on depression? Because we also have anxiety to tackle.
Go for it. I'll follow up off your question of anxiety.
No, yeah. Can we just jump into, I guess, with anxiety, like, and I don't want to go into the realm of people watching this or trying to figure out and self-diagnose, right? That's obviously, seek professional help. But if they're thinking, hey, do I have trauma? Do I have depression? Do I have anxiety? What are the signs? And like kind of go through those differences, but then shift focus to talking on like how anxiety comes about, what causes it, and those kind of things.
Okay. So yes, definitely seek mental health. Don't self-diagnose. People do that enough off TikTok, and normally
Yeah.
that's so with anxiety, it could come from anywhere really. It's just dependent. Like some people have social anxiety where they don't, and that's okay. Well, that could come from that has come up a lot more since COVID, I believe. I obviously wasn't in the field before that, but it seems like it has, because people were locked down a long time and then they had the fear of going outside. But with anxiety, generalized anxiety could start really anywhere. And it's just, it could be your brain. It could be how your brain works. It could be that you had something happen to you and now you're worried about everything else that's going to happen to you, or just like a general fear, I guess. And so it's like thinking, or even like, so anxiety is not always bad, right? So there can be good anxiety. The good anxiety gets you to get your project done for work or for school. You have the motivation, where like bad anxiety can be crippling and stop you from doing those things because you're so anxious about them, or you're so anxious about going into a social group where it's like their negative loop and you can't even get started. Or some anxiety doesn't always have to have panic attacks, but sometimes people will have panic attacks, which is like the heart rate beating fast and your chest is tight, you can't breathe, and you're trying to calm down. And that can also be like any factor can cause that to happen. Now, generally, it's like something's going on in your life, or you just had something big happen where you're panicking, because if you stuff stuff down, it has to come out some way. So that's a lot of the reasons why people have panic attacks, because it could be like something stuffed or something happened, they don't know where to go. But with anxiety, that's like a lot of questioning yourself, or what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Why am I going to do it? How's this going to get done? Kind of loops or, yeah, that would be, I don't know if that was a good enough example, but.
No, I think it was a great example, and even just shedding light on the fact that there is good anxiety is something that, again, perspective. Everyone, I hear anxiety, I immediately think a negative thought. Never that there's a positive attribute to it. But no, I think that was eloquently put.
Big word.
Yeah, and that was really hard with my new Invisalign to say. So
I feel
Was
like
that your word of the day? Did you have that in your dictionary for the word of the
no,
day?
definitely not. It just came to my head randomly. Sometimes my brain decides to work, usually after coffee. But anyways, Johnny, you said you might have had a follow-up question.
You hit a few of them. Francesca, I don't know if it's more because it's more talked about, it's taken more serious. I feel like the diagnosis or those who have anxiety is quote unquote more common. And I want to use that word very lightly. I'm not trying to stir the pot here. But is it because it's taken more seriously? Or are there just many more factors in the world that we're seeing contribute to anxiety and comparison, not having a clear and concise clarity around your goals, and that causing depression? I'm curious your thoughts, or is it just simply, hey, because it's taken more seriously? And it's okay to talk about it out loud.
Yeah, that could be part of it. I have no research on that. I will tell you. I do think that, and I know it's been talked about in the mental health world, that a lot of like kid anxiety is, or now adult, is related to social media.
I knew that was coming.
we could have a whole discussion on
Once
that.
you said
Yeah.
comparison, dude, that just hits social media right there, because that's all everyone's doing.
Right, it's constant, or the need for likes. Like, I'm not liked if I don't get enough likes. Or, I mean, even in adults, they're like that. So, and or now the world may be crazy, but it's always been kind of crazy. We just didn't have access to know it. And so I do tell a lot of people, if you watch the news, turn it off.
Yeah.
Like, if you're anxious, turn it off. Don't turn it on. Like, let's just do that for a week and see how you feel. Because the news, if you're watching it or you're watching it on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, it's going to drive you crazy, no matter if you are diagnosably anxious or not.
Yeah.
And I do think too, like, medications are more, and I am not a doctor. I don't medicate anybody. I have no say on medications, but the medications are more talked about or more likely to get. And so then people get diagnosed with anxiety, because to be on an anxiety medication, you have to be diagnosed with anxiety.
Yeah, that was kind of a stem from the question. Is I've noticed, and definitely in the workforce, for the younger generation, a lot of them are diagnosed with anxiety, and they have a medical prescription and whatnot. But it is very I was very curious to just get your thoughts. But yeah, social media, the news, we could go on an hour topic about that. So
Yeah, and there's a lot of pressure. There's a whole book out there. It's either called Untangled, or there's another one. There's one on kids and one on teens, at how the research does show that kids and teens are actually more stressed out now than before. And it does go to the social media, but I think it also goes to like the testing standards that we had testing, but not like, they have testing like every other month.
yeah.
And so there's a lot of pressure, and just, sometimes too, it's what's modeled for you. Like, if your parents anxious, you might not be anxious, but like, you're modeled to be anxious. So you're going to worry.
Let's step into that a little bit. Let's, I have a, what?
No, go ahead, step into it.
I have a question that was frameworked off of what Johnny was saying, but what you just said, kind of with the model theory, also, I would say, eases us into this conversation. Every individual is different. So one individual might have, and let's just look at it from like I would say like a figurative threshold, we can say. One person's level of anxiety may be, or their bandwidth of dealing with anxiety might be larger than another person's.
Yeah.
And it might be one person, a dog can bite at one person, that might cause severe anxiety. The other person might be like, oh, he's a friendly dog, and start petting him, which causes zero anxiety. How does one expand their bandwidth of the ability to deal with more anxiety-driven events. And this could be depression too. It doesn't have to be just anxiety. It could be, how does one expand and create more bandwidth, or I think in simplest form, how do you get more mentally strong, right? How do you do that in a strategic manner to grow your mental health? And just have this like, almost like working out. How do you do that?
Okay. So,
She's like, no tough questions, Kenny.
yeah. Well, I think it's learning to notice first, like I said before, noticing your emotions, noticing when you're feeling anxiety. Because I'm going to use anger as an example because it's a really good one. So anger, people shove down, but it's a cool emotion to explode with. But if you don't notice you're getting angry, you're probably going to explode. So if you start to notice the triggers to your anger, or you start to notice like, ooh, I'm feeling like I'm going to get really mad, it's like learning to walk away. So with anxiety, I would say it's learning to notice when you're getting that shaky feeling or that overwhelm in your head, and learn to, so we call it reframing your thoughts too, of like, okay, I'm anxious. What's true here? What's not true here? And you gotta like get yourself out of that negative like loop of like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? No, you can do this. What are you gonna do to this? Which is kind of like your goal setting. And how are you gonna put it into place? Instead of that like negative loop of like, I can't do this, I can't do this. That's not true. If it's like a project for a job, you got put on that project for a reason. So how do we reframe your thought pattern and give you the coping skills that you practice outside of therapy and utilize on a day-to-day basis, and notice and learn to notice the emotional pattern that comes along with it to be able to actually do it. Now, if you're not noticing the emotion, if you're not noticing what's going on in your body, you can't start to do the coping skills because you're never going to know you need it. It's like an alcoholic that goes to AA doesn't know they're an alcoholic until they go, like, admit it and go. It's the same thing with anxiety, like admitting like your feelings are in your body. Okay, I need to learn to cope with this. And what is going on in my mind that's triggering these thought patterns? What do I need to do? What is true? What's false? And how can I like get my mind to reframe? Like, I can do this. And now what's the next step? So I think I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. I think that someone who focuses on this and becomes strategic around it could honestly like mentally biohack their way to being a superhuman mentally. I do. I feel like if you could really understand that, I know you can play with this, I feel like, right? Like from a kid, clean slate, from a baby, clean slate. They don't know if they should have anxiety towards something or not because they have no ability to understand what the reaction or the social norm of the reaction is. So if they have no understanding of what the social norm reaction is, how do they react? They only react based off of the model that the parent places on them, most likely, right? Or maybe what's genetically provided to them, right? So there might be a genetic response, it might be a model response from the parent. But if you could, as the parent, I would say have the ability to play with that and provide them in like a strategic setting that continued to expand the level of anxiety, you could have someone that really doesn't have anxiety because you can just, like their threshold is just crazy in theory.
Maybe. I might argue with that a little.
So you're going to argue with it? Why?
No, okay, so, you're getting into a whole level of stuff that's way longer of a topic, but in mental health, there's what's called attachment. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of attachment style.
Educate us,
Educate us.
Francesca.
Educate
us.
I've only heard about them in emails.
Oh, wow, that was such a dad joke.
Come on. We're going to have one at least.
Okay. So attachment styles are essentially created between 0 and 18 months. And it is how they attach to the parent. And so basically there's 4 attachment styles. There's secure attachment, which you're secure in your attachment, less likely to probably have anxiety because you had a secure attachment base. Insecure attachment, which is like, I'm going to leave you before you leave me. Avoidant attachment is like, I'm going to avoid attaching to anybody completely. And then there's insecure avoidant attachment, which can be, I'm going to leave you or I'm never going to be with you kind of thing. And that's more like relational, but it stems and it starts in childhood between 0 to 18 months. And that's like the parents are consistent or inconsistent, or they know that if I cry, I'm going to get picked up. And that's not to say like, your kid can't cry, because they can absolutely cry. I mean, kids are going to cry. But I know my parent is there for me. And then there's the ones that are unsure or have something happen in that 18 months of like some sort of broken home or someone dies or something like that. And then your attachment you can get an attachment. So you'll see like The Blind Side, for example, the movie. He gets a new attachment in his life because he now has this new family that's consistent and good. So you can also fix ruptured attachments, and your attachment style can be changed. Before, they used to think your attachment style could never change. And so I think kind of what you were saying would be more of like creating a secure attachment in your child where they maybe will be less likely to have anxiety, but also allow them. And I think sometimes is what happens is that kids aren't ever allowed to like fall or fail. Like parents will come in, nope, I'm going to fix this for you. I'm going to fix this for you. Then you're more anxious to do anything too, because you never learn that it's okay to fall down and stand back up, and that somebody's there to support you though. And so that's the key, is being supported too, where like sometimes parents will stand over kids and never let them mess up and never let them fail and never let them fall, but they're not going to grow mentally if you're not learning it's okay to fail, it's okay to fall, but you also have that support behind you that you can fail and fall. So I don't know if I agree or not.
There's layers.
I think there's definitely layers of it. I think
That's
there's
a lot of
forms
layers.
severity.
Yeah.
I'm talking about. So you touched on both. So I agree with what you're saying in regards to like the 4 different aspects of like attachments. I guess those would be 4 pieces of attachments. So I agree with what you're saying in that regard. I was not looking at it from, I would say, as a severe case in that regard. I was thinking of it kind of similar to your last statement, which is like initially the dog barks, right? The baby doesn't know whether or not he should cry or laugh or what, so he cries. And then you change your reaction to that. Next time the dog barks, you're like, oh, he barked, like, yay, happy, like, this is all happy. And then he's like, oh, I should be happy. So then you change the reaction in that regard. Now, what I'm thinking of is, that's a simple event, dog barks. Like, there's more stressful and more anxiety-driven things. So as you continue to increase the scale of the event, not just from a dog barking, but let's say from, I don't know the next like more severe thing, but you just incrementally increase that level of severity in that situation. The response is the same. You're keeping the threshold. The response is saying like you should be acting happy for this, or you should not be thinking, you should be, I would say the reaction remains constant, but the event scales, if that makes sense. And then you're increasing the threshold.
Yeah, that does make sense. I guess because you were using anxiety before and like giving your kid anxiety. I was like, I don't know, but it's kind of the same thing as like dropping your kid off at daycare and they're like freaking out the first day, crying, but you come back, or you're like, it's okay, it's good. And then as they go to daycare, they stop crying.
Yeah, and then like on a more and then like on a more severe level, you drop them off at college. They're not like freaking out like, oh my God, my family left me, because now it's like you left them for X amount of months. Now they're like happy to go away. Not saying that you want to kick your kid out like right away. I don't know yet, but
You'll find out in about 18.
But
You'll find out.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like, can you increase the scale of those events if the reaction remained constant? Which then would, in theory, I guess, and this might be a thing in like mental health or just human physiology. I don't know. I might be not talking about the correct terms, but expanding your ability to deal with these certain circumstances, which I do think inevitably, I think is what we all fall through, right? As you age and you gain wisdom, per se, I think wisdom is the compounding event of going through situations, understanding your reaction, and doubling down on understanding the reaction, how you should have responded, understanding and becoming aware of that response, and then wisdom really is just you understanding your reaction within that certain situation or whatnot, and then you having an awareness. So I mean, I think inevitably we all do this at different levels. Like the things that we're dealing with at 30 are not what we dealt with at 15 because it's just different. So I think you're doing it. Can you just speed it up and be very advanced at 15 compared to 30? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think the problem with that is you bring in your brain development in that, and your brain isn't fully developed as females till 25, and males are arguably maybe 26, but maybe 25. They go back and forth. The last part of your brain to develop is your frontal lobe, and that's kind of more like the regulator. So that's why when you get adult hormones, but you still have a child brain, it's kind of psychotic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Not
So
going
it's
to
like,
name any names.
but yeah, like you're like parent, you'll hear parents say my teen is a mess, and you're like, yeah, well, can you regulate your emotions because you have a full brain? And if you're not, they're not going to. A, but B, their brain is not fully developed till they're 25, and so like the regulating, like the reasoning part of your brain is kind of the last part to be developed.
Interesting.
Yes, Jonathan.
I don't know if this is far off. I got a question around. So you're having one-on-one diagnosing a child. While we're on the topic of like parenting and getting older, at what point or in your world, in your expertise, like what do you do when you start realizing there's like a parenting problem or there is a challenge with the at-home might be impacting how that child is acting or is causing he or she to think or what to do?
Yeah. So when I work with children, I always work with the parents too.
Yeah,
So I will do child-centered play therapy essentially is, like I said, the kid works through, builds rapport with the therapist because I'm this new stranger. And then after about 5 or 6 sessions, maybe a little bit longer or a little less, depending on what's going on, I will meet one-on-one with parents, and then we work on tools to do at home as well. And that's not to say that the parent is or is not the issue. It's just to help the kid. And now you might see that the parent can't regulate. And so you kind of say those things gently. If your outbursts are angry and loud, your kids' outbursts are going to be angry and loud. So kids watch everything. That's why when they hear a cuss word at 2, they say the cuss word right after, probably. Kids hear
It's okay if you're Italian, though, right? Just kidding.
Well, I am Italian. What do you mean?
No, it's more for us. Like,
And from New Jersey.
you know, the F word's an adjective. Like, it's just
Yeah,
the way we talk.
Sentence enhancers.
Right. But I'm just using that as a small example
Yeah.
because parents are like, oh my gosh, why did my kid say that? And it's like, because you probably said it at home. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
Yeah.
Obviously. So yes, and all in all, yeah, I work with the parents too and help with that and kind of like, and one of the things, like I said, I work with a lot is kids need your undivided attention. They've needed it since the beginning of time. They still need it now, even if there's more things to do or more devices to utilize.
For sure.
Yeah, I saw this fun fact. Well, I don't know if it's a fun fact or not, but I saw this fact that like millennials spend 3 times more time with babies than previous generations. Is that like a known fact? I don't know. I don't know if that was true or not.
Oh, like
Social media shaping Kenny's outlook.
No, it wasn't social
Kidding.
media.
I'm kidding.
It was a article,
working remote.
probably from social media. But yeah, I mean, when you think of it like from
Disorder.
COVID aspect, yeah. If you're working from home, technically, yeah, you're with your fucking kid more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is.
I
Sentence
think-
There you
enhancer.
go.
Boom.
But I think too, like, I don't know how that would be true. I didn't see it. I'm not arguing it because I haven't researched it. But also, what about the people where like before, I don't know, the 60s, 70s, whatever year, moms were always at home.
That's true.
True. I was thinking about that while you said that. I don't know. I'm gonna get canned on social for this, but that's probably true. I'll come back to you. We'll do a different segment on that one. Let me look at the research on that one.
I want to piggyback off of Johnny's comment. So you're doing kid therapy and you work with the parents. My question is, when you're doing adult therapy, someone's come to you and you're going through the process, obviously their world isn't just them. Their world is family, there's friends, there's other coworkers, other things at play.
Mm-hmm.
How in your field do you guys start to break that down? And then at what point in time, or is there ever a point in time where maybe you get others involved to help this person, or is it all on that person to try to like communicate this now out to other people that don't know what's going on with them? And it's an interesting concept because I know people that go through therapy. I have not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested. I may do it someday. I don't know. But I'm also genuinely like invested in their well-being. So like maybe there's stuff that I want to, help out or just talk to them about stuff, see how things are going, whatever, but I also don't want to intrude. I'm just interested more on how does that play out? Other people being involved in the therapeutic process.
So my dog is distracting me. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Mine is too.
Stop
Very
barking.
anxious.
Okay, so yes, you can include other people in therapeutic. It depends on your modality for therapy. So every therapist looks at through a lens in therapy of whatever what's called a theoretic orientation is. So I'm a person-centered therapist, I would say, person-client-centered, whatever. So it's more like whatever they need to talk about that day and work through, that's what we work on. I'm not just like down in like following one theoretical approach. I utilize multiple, but it depends on the theoretical approach you use. So you can, if somebody's like, I want to bring my spouse into therapy to give you another view. Okay, well, then we need a release of information and they can come in, or my parent or my child, just to get like a different lens. But it would focus solely on the individual you're working with if you bring in other people. Now, you can have couples therapy where it's focused on the couple as a client, and you can have family therapy where it's focused on the family system. I am not a marriage or family therapist, so I don't work with either one of those, but in individual therapy, I will bring in other people if somebody wants them to, or if it would benefit the client in any way. Friends and coworkers, I have not done that. I don't know. Maybe other people do. And there's also group type therapy settings that could involve other people as well. So there's grief groups, there's anxiety groups, there's working through the holiday groups. So different people have different groups as well.
Okay. And then, so now you kind of mentioned a little bit there, if you think it's going to benefit the client, you'll suggest to bring someone in, but you can't essentially unless they sign off on it. Obviously, I'm assuming that's the...
Yeah, it would be more... HIPAA. It would be more of a...
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. It would be more of a them bringing up somebody a bunch or something and them saying like, I wonder what it would be like. And then I might say, bring them in. And so I guess it's less me suggesting, but more them.
Okay.
But yeah, they have to sign a release of information, even if the person knows they're going to therapy, because HIPAA.
Yeah, I would think there's a big HIPAA aspect of that.
Yeah.
I'm more curious on the side of like, say you had someone where a bunch of their family suggested you should go see therapy. You should go see a therapist, talk to somebody. And then they go, and then they come back. And again, this is more self-diagnosis, but the people that ask that person to go to therapy still think that there's something wrong. But that person is now turning around and saying, actually, my therapist is saying you guys were all the problem. And it seems like there's conflicting information going on there. There seems to be no way to kind of fix that, but I'm just curious, has that ever occurred in any of your clients or anything, or that they even share that, or they're manipulating that information that comes from therapy, like because they have a manipulative personality? I don't know. It's just an interesting concept. I've thought about it before.
It's a very specific situation you paint in there, James.
No, I
don't know.
No,
What's their name? Who's their name? Who is it?
No.
I will say that therapy is all from the individual's perspective.
Yeah.
So you work through whatever you're told by the individual. And so it's all perspective based, which kind of, yeah. Good. They could even say, oh yeah, my therapist says all this stuff, but their perspective is totally different.
Yeah, I think the reason why I bring it up is because I've heard people say, I didn't like my therapist, I'm going to someone else.
Well,
right?
I have like...
And so it's making me think, well, was it really the therapist? That's where I'm coming from.
So sometimes it could be, and it might be nothing that the therapist did. It could be like you didn't mesh with the therapist personality wise. And it's not that the therapist isn't a good therapist. It's just personality wise, they're not for you. And that's okay.
Okay.
And then sometimes it is like you got confronted in a way you didn't want and you don't come. Or sometimes the therapist isn't listening. Like there's so many different reasoning, because just like sometimes you just got to test your therapist, because not everybody's going to be for you. And that's okay. If a client doesn't mesh with you because, you know, you're one way, or your theory, again, it could be like your theory based part of you isn't what they wanted or what they thought. And that's okay too. So there's no real right answer on that, because there's many reasons somebody might switch therapists.
Yeah, it comes down to like some of the negative connotations around therapy that I've like just experienced through mostly media. Like interventions come up, and like now you feel like you're getting personally attacked. All these people are telling me that there's something wrong with me, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of where I was coming from that frame of mind. So I just thought it was interesting.
Are you watching that on TikTok?
No.
Instagram.
What was this?
YouTube.
Actually, I think How I Met Your Mother did make a play at this. It was funny. Obviously, it was for comedic relief, but they kept having interventions. I think literally the episode was called Interventions. So I don't know. It was just stuff like that. Like,
You're literally asking me if I do interventions on people?
no, I was taking those negative connotations of things that I've heard through mostly media, again, because I have not gone through therapy and I don't know much about the topic area, just to kind of understand like what goes on in that when negative experience occurs with therapy.
I think it's really important that an individual and their therapist mesh. Like, I think it's super important. But what I do think,
Most important.
what I do think is a gap in the market, or you know, and someone can go create a business out of this. I don't have enough time, but I would create a business on this. Is if you could find, and there might be some platforms out there that do this in some fashion, but if you can find a way to evaluate the person, understand the strategies and temperament and just the theme of that therapist, and put them together good. Because I think what people do is like, I need a therapist. They go on Google, therapists near me. They find a therapist, they call them. You have no idea if that therapist is right for you. You go through time with that person, and you invest in yourself, and you invest into the whole process, and it could be not for you or it could be for you. And it's no one's fault other than the fact that you're both in that area. But I think that if you could put together a program, BetterHelp might do this at some scale. But if no, cut that. Just kidding. But
You're talking about Tinder for
This is not
therapists.
sponsored by
Swipe right,
BetterHelp,
swipe
all
left.
right?
I don't think you understand how important this is. I think that this is probably one of the most important pieces to getting help in a matter that is going to change you. We can look at it like this. We can do a case study. We can have one therapist sit in this room, get with 3 different people, and you could. Yeah, but like I'm talking about not with us, because we're all kind of similar, and it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I couldn't do it anyways. It would be like a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
I think if you got 3 different people though, that are not like, we're too similar, and our lives have been together too much for us to have like different issues that far apart. But if you had 3 different people from 3 different places, 3 different issues, the similar issue, I guess you can say, but then you treated them the same, you're going to have one person that has a better result than another. But is it because they mesh better with the therapist? And I think if you mesh really good with your therapist, I think that your perspective from therapy sessions resonate with you stronger. I think your receiving the information is more profound, and then you go and do something with it. But if you leave that therapy session and you're like, what the fuck is that person talking about? Like, I don't know. And you're like on the fence about stuff, guaranteed you're not going to change anything. And then that shit's not going to work. So I think that meshing with your therapist is like one of the most important pieces that people don't think about.
Yeah, the therapeutic rapport is, I would say, the most important piece. Because you got to trust somebody, and again, it goes back to like feeling safe to share, to give deep information, trusting somebody. And like, yeah, that you kind of described like a blind speed dating for therapy just now.
But I'm going to see you guys later. Just kidding. But here, like, flip side of this, you have the wrong therapist, and it's not because of anything other than the fact that you don't mesh with the person. What's the time gap on you leaving that therapist and finding a new one? Or do you never go to a new therapist because now you have this
Bad
poor
taste in your mouth.
perspective of therapy's not for me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know that answer.
Dude, I just $1 billion business right there. Good luck to whoever makes it.
We'll back you up.
Therapymesh.com.
Oh my God.
I'm going
Tinder
to
therapy,
I'm
I'm
going to
telling you.
GoDaddy and I'm buying that URL
What?
right now
Why did you do
That's
this
ridiculous.
with BetterHelp? I'm just curious.
because it's like
It's BetterHelp or is BetterHealth? I don't know.
Better help.
BetterHelp. Okay.
I'm not answering.
Next
That's
topic.
fine. That's completely fine. What do you think about Inside Out and Inside Out 2? Because you mentioned
I
anger
love
earlier.
Inside Out and Inside Out 2. And Inside Out 2 was very, very good. Like anxiety Inside Out
Yeah.
2 is like,
Yep.
that is really anxiety's
Very
brain
relevant.
all the time.
Personified. Yeah.
He did really good. I will say they did a great job. I don't know what in Wa or in you. I guess she's just bored all the time. I don't know.
That's funny. I actually forgot about that character in Inside Out 2.
Well, I have all the Inside Out characters in my office. I've got like the stuffed animals, and then for Sandtray we got him. I just love him. He's so cute.
Yeah.
Balloons.
Ryan, you've been a little quiet.
I'm just learning, bro. I don't have a lot to contribute to this
Ryan's
conversation.
brain is exploding.
Just
I mean,
jokes.
maybe I did because I studied science, so maybe a little bit there.
Is your
Also-
coping mechanism to just make jokes? Is that what you're
It
kind of
could-
saying?
very
right
well
now?
could
Are we
be.
Covering? Are we
When
having a
I get
therapy session
uncomfortable, I
with
start
Ryan?
making jokes. Yes,
Yeah.
that is
It's a
accurate.
real thing.
That is a real thing.
Like a real
That is
thing.
a real
Yeah.
thing.
Like a real thing.
Is there
Coping
How
with-
real?
Like real. Because I do it.
I'm sure I've done it too.
Well, this is awkward. Make a dad joke. Something. I don't know.
Awkward.
So I guess we've kind of, I feel like it's been a little bit more on the extreme side, people that truly have trauma or truly have anxiety and all this stuff. What if someone's just genuinely curious about therapy and whether or not they even think that they should talk to someone? I'm going to use myself as an example. I've kind of flirted with it, but I don't foresee anything in my life where I truly think I can do it. And I think there's maybe a little pride factor there too, where I feel like I can not diagnose, I don't want to use that word. I have decent self-awareness, reflection of capabilities, but at the same time, it'd be interesting to see what another person says. And then one thing that also holds me back is probably more the monetary side of things. I know there's health insurance that can help out too, which I don't know if we want to get into that topic, but general public person
probably
seems to
not
be.
a good topic right now.
we can avoid that one.
Good.
Health insurance? Not a good topic right now.
The Luigi thing is what he's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
But anyways, someone who feels like they're on the up and up and they're kind of in a good space in their life, do you recommend, hey, still maybe go check someone out, talk to someone, that kind of stuff? Because I'm on the fence. I don't feel like I have a need. I'm fine today. My mental clarity seems pretty good, but I'm interested in what you think. And I understand there's conflict of interest as well too.
It's like a run-on sentence too. She's trying to figure out. Okay, where do I?
Wouldn't that just be like a life coach? Is a life coach a therapist?
That's a good
No.
question.
They can be, but no, life coaches don't have to be therapists.
Okay.
But wouldn't that kind of like
Is that more of what
have
maybe I would
synergy?
want? I don't
Wouldn't
know.
it? Like if you didn't have a problem, but you wanted to just, I guess, grow would be your.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't a life coach technically be that person? And then if they're not a therapist, who do you go to for positive loop therapy?
A life coach.
A life coach.
A therapist, you can go to therapists, work with, like sometimes people just need to talk to somebody
Yeah.
that's not in their life.
There you go.
100%.
And so, yes, you can go to therapy for those reasons. And life transitions, or just, I just need to blow off some steam. Like, you don't have to have a major diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
to go to therapy.
I think Ryan has some anxiety right now.
Me?
Yeah, just a little bit.
You need a life coach?
No, I don't think so
No.
right now.
Stop talking about life coaches, guys.
No life coaches. We're out.
I'm just kidding. There's nothing. Yeah, I'm just kidding. But yes, you can go to a therapist for any reason.
What if you go for no reason? Like, I don't know. I'm here.
Sounds like a waste of time.
That's
If you're
what
just
I'm
gonna go for
thinking.
no reason.
I don't genuinely think I have a reason.
Doing
That's why I'm
anything
like,
for
do
no
I
reason.
want to go or not?
James, let's be real. You would go talk.
I
because-
love talking. I'm on a podcast. That's the whole point.
Francesca just
Even
said,
though my
James, you
run
can talk
on
to a
set-
wall for an hour. Go talk to a therapist.
Well, I think there's something that you could better from going
Yeah.
to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Different
You
perspective.
can
And
always go.
sometimes you just don't know either.
And genuinely speaking, I usually go to my friends or family when I,
Yeah.
want to talk about stuff. So I guess I never went to a.
But we're just
Third
not
party.
licensed.
Correct,
You know?
correct.
We think
But
we
your
are.
friends and family are biased,
Correct.
Ooh.
Correct.
which is why a counselor can never be a counselor to their friend or their family member because you're biased. You
That's-
can't be
okay.
biased.
Yeah, but
What about for like Francesca? Hey, I'm working through this. I'm just curious. Can I get your thoughts on what you would do?
That's talking to somebody as a friend.
Correct.
Not going
It's
to
the way you word it, you know.
I'm not like friends. Like you just said, you guys counsel one another, but it's not in like a professional capacity.
We're not going
but-
to Francesca's office, she said. She's sending us somewhere else, basically.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yes. No, you cannot counsel your friend or your family.
There you go.
why? Because you know too much about their personal life?
Well, it's unethical, first off. In our ethics codes, you
okay.
cannot. You can't be unbiased, and it's a power dynamic, right? So the therapist has so much information on you,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
and
true.
it is not even that. Yeah, it's a power dynamic.
fair. Okay.
Hey,
Well,
Francesca, where can we find your information? You know, just around your LLC.
My business is called Replenish Counseling LLC.
If you don't
And
want
it-
that on, we could always cut it off. By the way, I don't know. Just throw you a little.
No, that's fine. Replenish Counseling LLC. I'm out of Daytona. I do virtual as well, but I have a website and it's just replenishcounselingllc.com.
Awesome.
And if you search me, I'm on Psychology Today, which is where you can find counselors if you need any too. Psychology Today has them in your area.
Psychology Today.
So that's a good resource. We can use that one.
Psychology Today is a good one that, people are on there. That's how they market, or
Gotcha.
there's some other sites, Mental Health Match.
Oh, damn it! They stole my thing. Mental health match.
No, what you were describing was totally different. That's just like looking at somebody online and reading their bio. You were like,
You were speed dating for counselors. That's literally what you were, which is what, sounds
Sounds like a legit business.
It's not bad.
I just don't have the
know.
time.
It sounds a little interesting.
If we gave you the perfect customers every time, bet you your results would be pretty profound.
All right. Next.
You would change lives every time because
How would you even
She's
do it?
already changing lives, bro.
no, every time.
Mm.
They're perfect. If
Nothing's-
you can, if
nothing
you
is
can mesh
perfect.
them.
Problem. Nobody's perfect, and if they're perfect, why are they going to counseling?
No, they're not perfect. I didn't say they're
Oh.
perfect. I said your abilities and their needs are a seamless match.
If speed dating and actual relationships is not a perfect match, even though people think it, the same thing is going to happen with therapists and it's people. People are not perfect, so it's always going to be a disaster.
All right.
Well, and
You'll be
that's
our
why-
case study.
That's why people specialize in different things. Like that's why I bring up kids and trauma and grief a lot, because that's more of my specialties. Or sand tray therapy, I'm certified in it. It's my specialty. So I think that's like part of Psychology Today. We'll say, what do you specialize in? Who do you work with? Like I said, I don't work with couples or families. I'm not trained in that.
Kind of like doctors. All doctors have things that they specify. in,
Specialize.
Yeah, I think you can get more granular. Visit us at therapymesh.com.
No, psychology.com.
No. Psychology.com?
That's backed. That's probably.
I'm pretty
one.
sure somebody already has Psychology.
1,000%.
Yeah,
That
that's-
domain's worth $4 million, probably, if it doesn't.
I was
even if
telling
it
people to
re-
actually go to the resource that's available today,
No,
not Kenny's made
Psychology
up one.
Today.
Oh,
Psychology
Psychology Today, sorry.
Psychology Today. Yeah.
Go there. Don't go to Kenny's website that's not made up yet. Go there in a couple weeks.
Yeah, go there in a couple weeks, please.
Well, Francesca, thank you. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for the time today. Just
Having
really,
me.
really educational.
Yeah.
Like, I think we all learned a lot and didn't know what to expect coming into this. And we're definitely leaving with some insights, and hopefully anyone who tuned in had a similar experience. So we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks,
Thanks
Francesca.
for having me. All right, I'll see you guys later.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.